Loved ones are now mourning the passing of Helen Reddy. The Australian singer had several hits during the 70s and was known for her feminist anthem, I Am Woman. The Grammy winner was diagnosed with dementia back in 2015. She spent the last years of her life in a care home in Los Angeles. She died yesterday at the age of 78. Well, money consistently ranks as a top reason for divorces. No surprise there, really. Chase Wilsey of Wilsey Asset Management has a few tips to prepare for a financially strong relationship. Boy, I just heard everybody put down their cup of coffee and start taking notes. Good morning.
Good morning. Good to see you.
Okay, I'm going to read this statistic first, and then I'm going to let you have this. According to Bankrate and their study, almost half of U.S. couples argue over finances, and 60% don't like their partner's spending habits. I want to ask you, is that surprising to you? And number two, I think the numbers are a little low.
Well, no, it's not surprising to me. I mean, it's one thing that kind of comes along with relationships is the commingling of money and talking about those issues. And a lot of times when things start to go bad, well, now you start to blame one another. And why did you spend on this? Why did you spend on that? I'm not surprised by that statistic at all. I think you are right. I thought it was even going to be a little bit higher.
Joint accounts or separate accounts? What's the thing these days?
Well, you know, I think you have to think about it. As we kind of talked about, a lot more people get divorced than you realize. Now, the thing with the joint account is sometimes if maybe you're not even married, maybe you're in a long-term relationship, you commingle those funds, it starts to get a little bit muddy in terms of, well, whose money is whose. Right. And now with things like Venmo or Zelle, these payment methods, it's very easy to transfer money from one person to another. Just some things to think about. Maybe a joint account works for one couple, maybe it doesn't for another, but I would just kind of keep that in the back of my mind in terms of opening up that joint account.
Yeah, there's no one truly set way of doing it that's right for everybody. Okay, so we have 4 steps to help people out. You know, take it if you need the help, do what you got to do. Open up the dialogue is so important, not just in finances, but pretty much that's a pretty good relationship advice, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. That's the first step there. You got to start the conversation somewhere. And the first question you got to ask yourself, what is the most effective form of communication here? I mean, do we have to set dinner date perhaps to talk about those finances? Is it better to just sit at the table and kind of write things down, take notes? Maybe another idea is we do have like a certified financial planner. Maybe you need an unbiased third party here. And I swear sometimes our certified financial planner, he acts more as a financial therapist than a financial planner going forward, talking about, well, what are your goals? You know, what is working for you? Kind of maybe an unbiased person will help with your marriage or your relationship as well.
And the second step is also a good one. How bills will be paid. Talk about that.
So that's, again, where kind of that joint account, individual accounts come into play. Got to understand that role first. And then secondly, who's going to pay for what? You know, you talk about a mortgage or rent. Are you both going to chip on it? Are some people going to pay more for one thing than the other? And then one thing I like to point out here, you know, it got me thinking when I was writing this segment was, let's say, I know a lot of men like to have NFL Sunday ticket. Maybe some women do as well. Well, does the woman want to have to pitch in on that? If one spouse wants one thing, is that fair for both of them to pay on it? You got to, again, goes back to open up the dialogue, have a fair conversation about who will pay for what.
Okay, this next one here says, understand the current picture. What does that mean?
Yeah, so here's really where you got to break things down. Before you can talk about things going forward, you have to understand your income. What are the expenses that you have on a regular basis? What are your assets? What are your liabilities? Now that you have 2 parties involved, you have to bring those 2 parties together and look at all the items as one.
Discuss the future plan. That's important. So when you start to get a little older, you start realizing, wait, what are we going to do when we're 50, when we're 60?
Yeah, and this is, again, the last kind of step here that we come up with. And talking about the future plan is, you know, what goals do we have? Do we want to buy a house together in 5 years? You really need to talk about these things as you progress. And one thing I want to point out here, too, is discussing that future plan. I mean, one big item that often comes up is discretionary spending. A lot of times people start to resent each other over spending. You need to come up with a set budget, and don't get mad if your partner wants to spend, let's say your budget's, just to make it simple, $500 a month in discretionary spending. That is your partner's money to spend however they want. You can't get upset about them. Really baking this into the budget, I think, helps with a lot of people's relationships because it really, I think, reduces the amount of resentment towards one another on those discretionary items.
How often do you think people should be talking about this? You don't want it to overwhelm your relationship, but it's something you should be doing every once in a while.
Oh, absolutely. And the big thing that people have to understand, money is dynamic. It's not going to be, we're going to put this plan in place and it's going to be the same thing in 2 years. Incomes can change. Expenses can change. Mortgages can go up. Taxes can change. All these things can change in the plan. So you have to understand money is dynamic, and this conversation needs to occur over time. It's not just going to be one plan, set it, forget it. It's going to depend from relationship to relationship. I'm not saying you need to meet every day to talk about it, of course. Maybe some couples it's once a month, maybe some couples it's once a quarter, but kind of getting that conversation going in terms of how often that will take place is very, very crucial in this process.
I'm telling you, Chrissy just walked by and said, gave the old I tell you what, I like that you brought up, given these numbers at the 50%, I like that you brought up bringing a financial person independent of you two and kind of talk it through. When you swipe left or swipe right, and then maybe look at your credit score. Hey, what's your credit score? Hey, what's your credit score? Right? Come on now.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Chase Wilsey, thank you as always. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
You got it.
Time now for your morning